The scale clicked. My mother winced. My sister didn't move. That number on the screen decided whether your day would begin with breakfast, or a locked door, and none of us ever knew which day would be our last before everything changed. In our house, numbers weren't just on report cards or grocery bills. They were on bodies. Stamped across our backs like branding. Every morning at 6 a.m., the women stood barefoot, eyes hollow, hair damp from midnight showers meant to squeeze out just one more pound. One more drop of water. One more day of survival. My father believed beauty meant control. That discipline was love. That if a woman's weight ticked up by even half a pound, it was not just a flaw, it was rebellion. A challenge. A betrayal. His solution was a locked room with no food, no light, and no choice. You stayed until the scale approved you. We learned early that hunger wasn't an emergency, it was a weakness. That our worth could be calculated by ounces lost. I was 8 the first time I saw my mother thank him after 3 days of confinement. Lips cracked, knees trembling, she smiled and said, "Thank you for keeping me beautiful." And I believed her. Back then, I believed all of it. By the time I turned 15, I had watched my sister pass out from hunger. I had taught my cousin how to fake a smile after vomiting. I had listened to my aunt explain how to eat air with your mouth open to trick your stomach into feeling full, but I also learned to fight back, not with fists. Not with protests, with precision. With science. With secrets they thought they could control our bodies. But I taught us how to control the scale. I started a sewing circle where we passed secrets between stitches, not about thread or fabric, but about survival. Diuretics. Sweatsuits. Water cycles. We transformed manipulation into armor. Our rebellion wasn't loud, it was quiet, calculated, and invisible, until the day everything broke. And it wasn't the numbers that betrayed us. It was the people we loved most. How do you survive when your family becomes your captor? And what happens when the truth finally comes knocking? The cold towel pressed against the soles of my feet as I stood in line behind my sister. It was still dark outside, that deep, breathless blue just before sunrise. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and sweat. My sister's shoulders were tense, her hair still damp from a 4 a.m. shower, strands clinging to her neck like spider silk. At the end of the hall stood the scale. Black. Digital. Merciless. My father sat beside it in a dining chair he dragged from the kitchen, a clipboard balanced on his knee, a pen poised like a weapon. He sipped his black coffee and didn't speak. He never did during weigh-ins. Only the scale spoke, its beep, its numbers, its verdict. My mother stepped forward. Her robe hung loosely from her frame. She placed both feet squarely on the platform. The scale flashed for a second, then beeped. 123, my father said aloud, writing it down. His tone was sterile. Robotic. He didn't even look up, same as yesterday, my mother whispered. He didn't respond. Next was my sister. She had been hovering at the edge of acceptable for a week now. At 119.5, she was safe. At 120, she was punished. She stepped forward, visibly trembling. The scale beeped. 120.2. Time stopped. My sister's breath hitched. She tried to speak, to offer some explanation, water weight, period bloat, shoes heavier than yesterday. But she knew none of it mattered. My father tapped his pen against the clipboard. Room. She turned toward the hallway without protest. The room was an empty bedroom that had once been our playroom. Now, it was just a concrete-floored chamber with blackout curtains and no food. We called it the room like it was a title, capital. She would be locked in for at least 24 hours, or until her weight dropped. My cousin Margie, only 12, looked like she might vomit. Her turn was next. I stepped back, made my excuses, and slipped out of line. I knew this game too well. In the bathroom, I reached into the sink cabinet where I'd hidden a bag of tricks, caffeine pills, sweatsuits, a thermometer to fake fevers. I popped a pill and gulped water just enough to keep my mouth from sticking together. I stripped down, wrapped myself in plastic under my hoodie, and turned the heater on full blast. I had 30 minutes to sweat out 2 pounds. Flashback. The seat of control. I was 8 when I first watched my mother stumble out of the room, her lips white and split, her arms limp at her sides. She had spent 3 days locked in after gaining 0.7 pounds, water retention, she'd whispered. When she emerged, my father handed her a glass of water and said, "That's enough for now." She smiled at him. I'll never forget that smile. Not because it was genuine, but because it was the smile of someone who'd been trained to say, "Thank you," after being punished. I thought that was love, and so did everyone else. Back in the hallway, my body burned under the layers. I wiped sweat from my neck and stepped into line just as my name was called. Beep, 107.9. My father nodded. Good. Good, that word was our currency. Our metal. Our lie. That night, I sat in bed, watching my sister through the heating vent between our rooms. She was curled up on the mattress inside the room, her knees pressed to her chest. No food. No water. Just the quiet click of the lock, a lullaby for compliant daughters, but something was changing in me. I didn't want to smile and say thank you. I didn't want to play the game. I wanted to burn the scale. I wanted to scream. Instead, I did the only thing I could. I began planning. Thursday afternoons used to mean tea and embroidery at my aunt's house. Lace doilies, old radio music, and the hollow chatter of women too tired to rebel. That changed. The day I brought a duffel bag full of secrets instead of sewing supplies, the girls were already there, my sister, Margie, cousin Layla, and 3 others. They sat cross-legged on the carpet, eyes dull from hunger, fingers threading needles out of habit more than purpose. I waited until the door clicked shut behind us before pulling the zipper open. I brought something better than fabric, I said quietly, pulling out packets of hydration salts, caffeine pills, tiny notepads, and old kitchen scales I'd found in the garage. Layla blinked. What is this? Freedom, I said. Or at least a way to survive a little longer. They listened. I explained what I'd learned from wrestling practice, how boys dropped 5 pounds overnight just to make their weight class, then rehydrated like nothing happened. I told them how to eat a real dinner and still pass a morning weigh-in. I taught them how to sweat out water weight in garbage bags, how to time their food intake, how to drink salt water to delay water retention. It was dangerous. It was desperate, but it was ours. The tricks of survival. We tracked everything. We built charts, how long it took to burn off a cup of soup, when periods made us heavier, what to avoid before stepping on the scale. I taught them to chew gum, to keep saliva going, to brush their teeth 3 times a day so their breath wouldn't give away fasting, to hide food in their clothes if the men watched meals too closely. We stitched secrets into sleeves. My mother thought we were making quilts. She smiled approvingly and brought us tea, never questioning why none of us drank it. Only warm water could trigger sweat. Cold water was forbidden. The day before a weigh-in point one day, I watched 12-year-old Margie prick her finger with a needle and suck the blood away before whispering, better than being in the room. That was when I knew, this wasn't about control anymore. It was about war. The first victory. 6 weeks after our first meeting, something incredible happened. Every girl passed her weigh-in. Every single one. No rooms. No punishments. Just cold, approving nods from the men who thought we were finally understanding. They didn't know we were manipulating the system. They didn't know our bodies were still breaking, just in secret. They didn't know we were documenting everything. That day, I added a new rule to our circle: photograph everything. The girls began snapping photos of scale readings, hiding recorders in their rooms, tracking bruises and dehydration symptoms. We used burner phones, deleted messages, created cloud backups. We weren't just surviving now. We were building evidence, seeds of hope. By the second month, the circle had grown. More cousins joined. One girl whispered, "My aunt says this is rebellion." Another brought me a flash drive. "My sister's boyfriend is good with tech, he showed me how to encrypt files." We pretended to embroider. We were stitching a movement each Thursday. We built resistance through routine. My sister looked stronger. Layla started smiling again. Margie gained a pound, and we helped her lose it safely before the next morning. It wasn't perfect. It was still a prison, but now, we had maps of the escape routes, and just when I started to believe we could outsmart the system forever, something happened that none of us saw coming. The weight of truth. It was Layla's father, my uncle. He brought home a new scale. A mechanical one. No electronics. No hacks. No magnets. No mercy. The next morning, the lies we'd built collapsed like dust. Every girl was 5 pounds over. The room exploded with fury. Doors slammed. Punishment rooms filled faster than ever. Girls screamed. My 13-year-old cousin shouted, "We've been faking it. We've been eating. We lied." And in that moment, we were no longer invisible. We were discovered. The air in the house was dense with fear. Shouts echoed through the hallways, like thunder rolling through a valley of secrets now unearthed. They dragged the girls one by one. My cousins. My sister. Even my aunt. There weren't enough official punishment rooms to hold them all. They began locking closets, storage rooms, even the basement. The fathers moved like a unit, controlled, focused, enraged. Like generals in a war they didn't know they were losing until the battlefield caught fire. In the middle of the chaos, my cousin Nora, just 13, screamed the words we'd all been too afraid to say out loud: "We've been faking the numbers. We've been eating this whole time." The room fell silent. One by one, heads turned toward her. Her father, my uncle, stood frozen, his face already turning crimson with rage, but Nora wasn't done. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. "I have everything," she said. "Photos. Screenshots. Videos. You can't lie anymore." She tapped furiously. The screen lit up with our secrets, manipulated weigh-ins, the magnet hacks, timestamped messages, tutorials on how to fool the digital scales, girls eating full dinners and still passing morning checks. My uncle grabbed the phone. His voice trembled. You poisonous little. He raised his hand, and then came the sirens. The storm arrives. Red and blue lights washed through the windows like a warning. Police cars. Their radios crackled as doors burst open. Officers spilled into the house with urgency, guns holstered but hands twitching toward them. Orders were shouted. People screamed. Somewhere in the chaos, I heard my sister sobbed out. A woman officer, calm but firm, knelt beside Nora. You're safe now, she whispered. We saw the live stream. Nora's lips parted in shock. You saw? She nodded. You've been live. For 10 minutes. People have seen everything. I watched my uncle's hand drop as if it had been burned. One by one, officers pulled us into separate rooms. I sat on a couch, heart racing, sweat still drying under my hoodie from the emergency dehydration I had done just hours earlier. My father paced behind me, trying to keep control of the room with charm and spin. Officers, this is clearly a misunderstanding, he said, putting on his best smile. We're a health-conscious family. These girls are exaggerating. Another. Father jumped in. We encourage healthy eating habits, that's all. But the officers weren't buying it. They'd seen too much truth versus image. Social workers arrived shortly after. CPS. Clipboards. Folders. Folding dividers turned our living room into a field office. They started interviewing the girls, one by one. I watched Margie walk in, clutching her phone like a lifeline. I watched my sister walk out, pale but unbroken. The fathers huddled in the dining room, whispering and dialing phones. Within hours, a man in a tailored suit appeared, their lawyer. His briefcase clicked open like a warning shot. He disappeared with them into my father's study. Through the wall, we could hear muffled voices. Strategy. Denial. Legal spin. That night, the house didn't feel like a home. It felt like a battlefield caught in a ceasefire. Intimidation returns the next day. The lawyer's strategy unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. The punishment rooms weren't punishment, they claimed, they were timeout spaces. Voluntary. Spiritual. For meditation and reflection. The locks? Just a precaution. For privacy. It would have been laughable if it weren't so terrifying. Then came the retaliation. My uncle began showing up at our schools. Not publicly, no. He cornered the girls one at a time. Notes slipped into backpacks. Whispered warnings. Smart girls know when to stay quiet. My sister found one that read, Maya's gone. Do you want to be next? And they weren't idle threats. 3 girls disappeared from school that week. Too traumatized to return, their mothers said. But we knew. They were being hidden. Isolated. Cut off from us. Our circle shrinking by the day. A deeper betrayal. The real blow came from someone I trusted most. Brad. My older brother. The tech genius who helped us start the group chats. Who encrypted our cloud backup. Who made us feel safe. That night, I checked the cloud. Every file was gone. Photos. Videos. Screenshots. Months of evidence deleted. I stormed into his room. He sat at his desk, staring blankly at his computer screen. Brad, what did you do? He couldn't look at me. Dad made me do it, he said quietly. He found out about the backup. Said if I didn't wipe it, he'd cut me off. No. College. No funding. Nothing. I backed away slowly. The pit in my stomach was worse than anything I'd ever felt in the room. Not from hunger. From heartbreak. Brad, our insider, had become a saboteur. I didn't sleep that night. The weight of betrayal sat heavy on my chest, crushing me in ways no punishment room ever had. Brad, my brother, our digital shield, had wiped months of our work like it was nothing. Years of bruises, locked doors, dehydrated bodies reduced to blank screens and broken trust, but I knew him. Brad never did anything without a backup plan. At dawn, I slipped back into his room. He was gone, off at basketball practice. His laptop sat on the desk, closed, locked, password protected, but Brad had always been predictable. His passwords were variations of the same thing: med school 2023, Brad pre-med, dad's career. On the 5th try, I was in. My hands trembled as I opened his documents folder. There it was. A folder labeled insurance. The other side of the betrayal. Inside were files. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Screenshots of group chats, backups of our deleted evidence, audio clips, photos of the room, weight charts, emails, notes. But something else too: annotations. Brad had been watching us closely, tracking our routines, even predicting what we'd do next. It wasn't just insurance. It was surveillance. He'd become my father's double agent. Watching, documenting, betraying, then saving enough to protect himself if the tide turned. I closed the laptop and left the room quietly. But I didn't hate him, not yet, because in that twisted, calculated betrayal, he'd kept the truth alive. The prosecutor's doubts. That afternoon, the prosecutor met with us in a quiet corner of the community center. Her forehead creased with Stress, eyes dull from endless paperwork and long hours, with Mia missing and the digital evidence deleted, she said, we're losing ground. The defense is using the cultural misunderstanding narrative. Strict parents. Conservative traditions. My jaw clenched. I wanted to scream. But I held it in. There must be something left, she said. Anything. Anything concrete. And then I remembered the hidden phones in the early days. I had taught the girls how to hide old phones in the punishment rooms. Audio only. No signals. Just recorders buried in heating vents and behind wall panels. Some might still be there. The perfect opportunity came that weekend, during my cousin's wedding. The whole family would be at the venue. Even my uncle. His house would be empty. I told my mother I had cramps. Too sick to attend. She barely blinked, too busy managing seating charts and appearances. By noon, I was in my uncle's driveway, heart pounding. The fake rock still hid the spare key inside. I didn't hesitate. I knew exactly where to go, the punishment room closet, the heating vent at the baseboard. I got on my knees, pried it open with a screwdriver. 3 phones. 2 were dead. One blinked weakly at 10% battery. I plugged it into my portable charger and scrolled audio. Hours of it, girls crying. Locks clicking. Footsteps. Pleading. And then, gold, the smoking Guna voice. My uncle's. Clear. Calm. Recorded. I know locking them up is technically kidnapping. But sometimes, you've got to break small laws to preserve important traditions. These girls, they need discipline. Order. I stared at the phone, unable to breathe. That was it, that was enough. Then the door creaked behind me. David's revelation. I spun around. David. My uncle's son. 17. The next generation's enforcer. We all thought. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. What are you doing here? I asked, clutching the phone. I've been waiting, he said. For what? For someone to find those. He stepped forward, holding out his own phone. On the screen was a folder, insurance. The same word. The same betrayal. But from a different angle. I'm gay, he said simply. I've been hiding it for 3 years. I know what it's like, to live in a family that punishes who you are. I stared at him, heart pounding. I've been recording everything. Dad. The lawyer. Their strategy meetings. How they plan. To spin everything. Why didn't you come forward before? I asked. He shrugged. Same reason you taught us to fake the scale instead of calling the cops. We weren't ready to destroy the system. We were just trying to survive in it. Allies in the dark. We worked for an hour, side by side, transferring files, creating backups. David had recordings of the fathers confessing to manipulating the girls, of the lawyer coaching them to lie, of them laughing about discipline. We uploaded everything to 3 clouds, sent files to trusted people, encrypted the drives. This isn't just about our family, he said. It's bigger. I nodded. Then we go bigger. With David's recordings, my recovered phone, and Brad's hidden backups, we had a mountain of evidence. But evidence was nothing without a system willing to listen, and the system didn't want to listen. The prosecutor called a meeting with us the following week. She looked exhausted, not just tired, but soul tired. The kind of weariness that comes from trying to force justice into a world built to ignore girls like us. We've got enough to push forward, she said. But it's still shaky. They're painting it as a cultural issue, traditional parenting, misunderstanding, health concerns. And what do we call locking a girl in a room with no food for gaining weight? I asked. She sighed. In some places? Parenting. The room is reborn. When we got home that night, something had shifted. My mother stood in the hallway staring at the door to the punishment room, now empty, abandoned, but still full of memories. Without speaking, she opened it, stepped inside, and ran her fingers along the walls. I want to turn this into a library, she said finally. Words have power. We'll fill this room with better ones. I didn't speak. I just nodded. Because for the first time in my life, I saw my mother not as a prisoner. Not as a survivor, but as a builder. The sewing circle transforms. We met that Thursday at the community center again. 6 of us left, the others silenced by threats or pulled from school. But we weren't there to hide anymore. No more fake embroidery this time. I brought notebooks. Real ones. Legal pads. Clipboards. We started documenting our strategy, who had evidence, what was missing, who could testify, how to protect the youngest girls. The circle wasn't just survival now. It was strategy. It was worth. Then someone knocked on the door. It was Layla's mother. I want in, she said. I didn't know how bad it was. I believed the lies, but I'm ready now. Behind her were 2 more mothers. And then 3 more. Our little circle began to grow again, not in secret, but in strength. The backlash. But the fathers were watching. School officials started pulling us out of class. Concerned counselors. Mysterious referrals. Whispers of treatment centers. The new tactic was simple: isolate us again. I was in calculus when the office called me down. My uncle waited in the counselor's office, all charm and crocodile concern. She's been encouraging the other girls to overeat, he said smoothly. We believe she has an eating disorder. The opposite kind. She's spreading dangerous ideas. I looked at the counselor. She looked unsure, caught between authority and instinct. My uncle leaned in, voice lower. We found a facility. Discreet. Effective. We just want what's best for her. The trap closes that afternoon. I found my sister in the school bathroom, crying. She'd gotten a note in her locker: Maya misses her family. Don't make the same mistake. 3 girls disappeared that week. Homeschooled, the families said. We never saw them again. The fathers were accelerating. Desperation made them bold. Then came the final blow. Brad's full betrayal. One night, I passed Brad's room and noticed something strange. He was always on his laptop now, always closing screens the moment anyone walked in. While he was at practice, I slipped inside. The laptop was locked again, but I knew his patterns. Inside were dozens of folders, not just of our chats, but of everything. Logs. Patterns. Predictions. He had mapped our rebellion like a scientist studying ants. But one folder stopped me cold: Dad's project. Inside were screenshots, audio files, even video clips, all dated after he claimed to delete the cloud. You were spying, I whispered to the empty room. He had betrayed us more than once. Thursday arrived with empty chairs and too many silences. Only 4 girls came to the sewing circle. The rest had vanished behind locked doors and fake homeschool curriculums. The community center's fluorescent lights flickered above our heads like nervous eyes. We sat in a tight circle pretending to stitch. No one touched the thread. I think we should stop, said Peggy, my youngest cousin, only 11. Her voice barely rose above the hum of the vending machine in the hallway. My mom says we're tearing the family apart. I felt something split inside me. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just the realization of how deep their control ran. The family was already torn, I replied. We're just making the tears visible. The idea that changed everything. That's when Margaret, one of the newest girls, spoke up for the first time. My neighbor's daughter went through something like this. Not with weight, but with rules. She said the key wasn't police. It was adults outside the family who actually listened. Teachers. Doctors. Counselors. That word stuck in my head like a pin in fabric. Listen. We'd gone to police. CPS. But the Father's lawyers were too good at spinning tales. What if we went smaller? Closer. The school nurse, building the paper trail. The plan formed quickly. Each girl would visit the school nurse separately. Report real symptoms: dizziness, headaches, missed periods. All true. All consequences of what we were being forced to do. Mrs. Chen, the nurse, was a mandated reporter. If we could get medical documentation, we could build a case that couldn't be erased, spun, or hidden. Over the next few days, we followed through. We trickled in one by one, talking about our fatigue, brittle hair, discolored nails. She took notes. Asked questions. Her face grew more serious each time, but the fathers were watching more closely than we realized. The retaliation. One morning, I woke up to find my mother sitting at the edge of my bed, pale and shaking. Your father knows, she whispered. About the nurse visits. Someone told him. My stomach dropped. He's pulling you and your sister out of school. Today. He already called. My mind spun. No school meant no nurse. No witnesses. No adults to tell. Mom, you have to stop him. I said. She shook her head. I can't. You know I can't. You're our mother. You have rights. I gave those up a long time ago. But then I saw it, behind her defeat, a flicker. Not quite hope. Not quite strength. Something in between. In desperation, the quiet rebellion. That afternoon, while my father was at work, my mother did something she hadn't done in years. She drove us to school. I'll tell him you snuck out, she said, hands trembling on the wheel. I couldn't stop you. It was a tiny rebellion. But it was hers. At school, I went straight to Mrs. Chen's office. I need help, I told her, and I told her everything. She listened. Eyes wide, mouth set in a firm line. I'll file a report, she said. But I want medical documentation. Do you have anything concrete? Photos? Charts? I thought of David's recordings. Brad's secret files. The old phones. I'll get it, I promised. The explosion at home that night. My father found out we'd gone to school. He waited in the living room, seething. You deliberately defied me, he said. Both of you. My sister and I stood side by side. We went to school, I said. That's not a crime. In this house, he replied, my word is law. And you've broken it. For the last time. He pointed to the hallway. You'll stay in your rooms until you remember what obedience means. Something shifted beside me. My mother, she stood up. No, she said. Everyone turned. No, she said again, louder. They're going to school. They're going to eat. They're going to live. You forget your place. I remember it perfectly, she said. And I'm done. Brad's reckoning. My father raised his hand, not to strike, but to command, to control, and Brad moved. He stepped between them, laptop in hand. I have everything, he said, every conversation. Every threat. Every pound lost. Every door locked. My father froze. You wouldn't. I already did, Brad replied. Backups. Everywhere. He turned the laptop toward us. Folder after folder of evidence. Audio, texts, photos. Financial records. Plans to isolate the girls. Coaching from the lawyer. You're my son, my father said, and they're your daughters, Brad snapped. But you only remembered that when it helped you control them. My father turned and walked out. We heard the door slam, his car, his silence, his exit. For 2 days, the house stood still. My father's car didn't return. His closet stayed untouched. His shoes by the door gathered dust. But silence wasn't. Peace. It was a waiting room for war. While we stopped measuring lettuce leaves and hiding salt packets, the rest of the families doubled down. Cousins texted from locked bedrooms. One whispered that her father made her wear her school uniform for weigh-ins to account for fabric weight. Another said she was being weighed twice a day, once in the morning, once at night. At first, the freedom felt like a victory, but we were the exception. The system lived on. The sewing circle regrows. That Thursday, our circle gathered again. Only 5 girls, but this time, 3 mothers joined, quiet, wide-eyed, wearing shame like perfume. One of them, eyes rimmed red, sat beside her teenage daughter and whispered, I believed him. All those years, I believed it was love. She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. We handed out hot tea. Actual tea, no hidden pills. Cookies too. No calorie counting. I looked around the circle, at the bruises under sleeves, the hollow cheeks, the shaky hands, and I realized something. We weren't surviving anymore. We were healing. David's update that night. David messaged me, they're organizing. He sent screenshots. A secret group chat. Dozens of numbers. Fathers from across the community sharing strategies, how to contest school reports. How to push wellness narratives. Even which lawyers to call for defamation threats. Worse still, they were pooling money, not just for lawyers, but for rehabilitation. Not the locked bedroom kind. Facilities, places to send girls who refuse to comply, hidden under terms like health retreats and family correction centers. They were building a system to outlast us. Margaret's warning the next day. Margaret, quiet and soft-spoken, said something that stopped us cold. What if it's not just our families? What do you mean? I asked, my classmate. She's from a different community. But same thing. Weigh-ins. Punishment. Food charts. Maybe this is happening in more families than we think. The idea chilled me. Not just our household. Not just our uncles. A pattern. A network. Building the pattern. We started looking, carefully. Online forums. Whisper networks. Anonymous posts, and one by one, girls began speaking up. I was forced to measure my waist every day. If I gained weight, they made me run laps before school. I wasn't allowed to eat if my skirt felt tight. Different families. Different cities. Same tactics. Food as punishment. Silence as discipline. Shame as control. We built a spreadsheet, names redacted. Patterns tracked. Nurses in other schools began reporting the same symptoms. Girls dehydrated. Underweight, emotionally unstable. We weren't crazy. We weren't exaggerating. We were documenting a systemic abuse structure masked as health tradition. My uncle's counterattack. Just as momentum grew, my uncle struck. He came to our house. One evening when my mother was home alone. I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, clutching her wrist. A bruise was already forming, he said. I'm destroying the family, she whispered. He said, I'll regret choosing corruption over tradition. I photographed the bruise. Uploaded it to our cloud. We documented so much, scale numbers. Recorded threats, dehydration symptoms, but this was fear made physical. The public threat. The next day after school, 3 men waited by my car. Not from our family. From others. Stop interfering in private family matters, one said. This is your last warning. I held up my phone, already recording. Is that a threat? They backed off. But the message was clear. We weren't just dealing with our fathers anymore. We had disturbed a network of control masquerading as culture. Brad's redemption. That night, Brad knocked on my bedroom door. He had his laptop. I've been watching their group chats, he said. They're planning something. He pulled up files, messages about transferring girls across state lines, payment logs for private facilities, tactics for discrediting school nurses. This isn't just abuse anymore, he said. This is trafficking. He stared at me. We need to go louder. I nodded. Then we find the last of the evidence, and we go public. Sunday arrived soaked in gray rain and low-hanging clouds. The sky felt heavy, like it knew what we were about to do. The plan was set. David would gather final recordings from inside his father's house during Sunday dinner. Brad would organize all the files into backups and distribute them to trusted allies. The other girls were completing their medical visits, their bodies the last piece of evidence, and me? I was going back into my uncle's house, not alone this time. Margaret came with me, along with her older brother, Theodore, a former victim of another kind of control. He'd run away at 18. Now he was 21, fiercely protective, and prepared. We go in. We get what's left. And we get out, he said, checking the phone battery, spare memory cards, a pocket knife. No games. The entry, the spare key under the rock was gone, but Theodore knew houses like this. The back window latch was still broken, same as it was when he was a boy. Within minutes, we were inside. The punishment room was colder than I remembered. It smelled faintly of mold and forgotten sweat. The mattress was gone, but the floor still had scrape marks from where desperate feet had paced. I knelt beside the heating vent and started unscrewing. Paint sealed the screws. Someone had tried to lock the truth away, but I kept working. Theodore stood watch. Margaret searched other vents. Finally, I pried it open. Empty. The deeper find. Check. Other rooms, Theodore said. If they found this stash, maybe they moved it. We found out. 10 minutes later, Margaret called out softly. In here. She held up a stack of papers, tucked behind a false panel in the closet of another bedroom. Medical records. Treatment plans. Printed emails. All from a so-called rehabilitation center across state lines. Girls' names. Fake diagnoses, oppositional defiance disorder. Family disruption syndrome, and then, Maya, her name. Her file. Her cell. I knew it, I whispered. She didn't run. They sent her away. The trap springs. Then came the sound of car doors outside. My breath caught. They're here, Theodore said. Back window. Now. We turned, but flashlight. Beam sliced through the rain. Too late. The voice in the dark. I know you're in there. It was my uncle. His voice bounced off the walls of the house. Your cousin David told us everything, he continued. Poor boy finally remembered where his loyalties lie. My heart fractured. I didn't want to believe it. But how else would they know? Margaret's face turned white. He betrayed us. Maybe, Theodore whispered. Or maybe they're lying to break us. You have two choices, my uncle called. Come out, and we keep this in the family. Or we call the police and charge you with breaking and entering. I looked at Theodore. What do we do? He pulled out his phone. We go loud. The live stream. With shaking hands, he opened his camera app and hit go live. We are trapped inside a house where girls have been locked up for gaining weight, he said to the lens. They're surrounding us right now because we tried to collect evidence. The comments started flooding in. Hundreds. Then thousands. Where is this? This is insane. I'm calling the police now. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Flashlights found us through the windows. Theodore kept filming. 3 teenagers. 1 locked room. 1 massive cover-up. This is how control looks in real time. The showdown. The back door flew open. My uncle stood there. Behind him, other fathers. Men from other families. But something was different now. Neighbors were outside. Watching. Filming. Some had their phones up. Others stood stunned. Turn that off, my uncle growled. No, Theodore said. The live stream continued. We're done being quiet. My uncle stepped forward, and then stopped. Sirens again. Police cars pulled up. Radios alive. Officers poured out. One neighbor waved them over. She's live streaming, she told the officer. Said they were being locked up. The collapse. The officers pushed past my uncle, into the house. Theodore handed over his phone and pointed to the papers we'd found. This is all we have. More sirens. CPS. A journalist with a press badge. Neighbors whispering. Someone crying. My uncle's mask cracked. The control he clung to was slipping. We walked out. Not as rebels, but as survivors holding proof in our hands. I in the crowd. I saw David. He stood behind his mother, eyes rimmed red. I didn't tell, he mouthed. I believed him, but I knew, in this world, truth needed more than faith. It needed backup. The courthouse smelled like paper and panic. Our names were whispered in corners. Cameras clicked outside like 1,000 insects. Inside, polished shoes squeaked against marble, and our story, once hidden behind closed doors, was now stapled into legal documents. Supporters filled one side of the courtroom, teachers, nurses, mothers who had finally seen the truth. The other side held the Father's allies, buttoned tight into their suits. In silence, the judge entered. The room stood. A gavel cracked the air like a lightning strike. This was it. My mother testifies. She walked to the witness stand in a simple blue dress. No makeup, her hair pulled back. Not frail anymore. Not quiet. Just ready. I was locked in a room for gaining weight during my second pregnancy, she said. He said it was for my health. She spoke of dehydration, of blood pressure crashes, of sobbing through a locked door as a fetus kicked inside her. She showed medical records, emergency visits disguised as routine checkups. She pulled out photos. Photos of her sunken cheeks, cracked lips, skin sallow from starvation. I thanked him, she said, voice shaking. That's what hurts most. I thanked him for hurting me. The courtroom was silent. A silence so sharp it cut. Maya returned. She entered with her aunt. Her steps were uncertain, her face pale. But she carried something powerful, documentation, photos of the facility. Her room. Her meager meals, they called it treatment, she said. But I wasn't sick. I was just hungry. Her testimony was short, simple, devastating. When the defense questioned her, they suggested she had exaggerated. That she was too young to understand. She pulled out a photo of herself from the punishment room, standing beside a scratched wall. Her face gaunt. A calendar drawn in pencil to count the days. I understood enough to want out, she said. The defense's playbook, they claimed we were dramatic, rebellious girls caught in social media echo chambers. They brought in experts who talked about the dangers of obesity, of body positivity gone too far. They called it parental guidance, they called it cultural tradition, they called us confused. But then we played the recordings, the voices of control. Sometimes you gotta break small laws to preserve big values. They don't listen unless they're starving. We keep them thin, we keep them obedient. The courtroom heard our fathers. Unfiltered. Arrogant. Real. Then the footage from the grocery store surveillance, 6 men arriving 20 minutes before we entered the house. Their claim of catching us breaking in unraveled. The charges flipped, not trespassing, entrapment. Then came Brad's evidence, emails from our father threatening him. Group chats between men discussing strategy. Financial logs of payments. To families taking in exiled daughters. I did this to protect my sisters, Brad said on the stand. I couldn't watch them get buried under silence. The crack in their wall, and then something none of us expected. Peggy's father stood up during a recess. He asked to speak with the prosecution. He testified. Full confession. Not just about his own actions, about the network. The cross-state coordination. The facility. The falsified diagnoses. The money. The day my daughter collapsed from dehydration, something broke in me, he said. I thought I was keeping her safe. I was killing her. He named names. He showed receipts. The verdict. The jury took 6 hours. 6 hours that felt like centuries. We sat in a small side room, holding hands. I held my sister's left. David held my right. My mother paced. Brad didn't move. Margaret whispered prayers under her breath. When they returned, I didn't breathe. Guilty. On all counts, conspiracy to commit false imprisonment, child endangerment, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. Sentences would come later, but in that moment, it didn't matter. My uncle was handcuffed. My father wasn't there, he had already fled. A warrant followed by a manhunt would come next, but the power was broken. The courtroom emptied, but the echo of the verdict lingered like a hymn. The war we'd fought wasn't just about scales or rooms. It was about voice, and now, finally, we had ours. My mother filed for divorce the next day. Not quietly, not in shame, publicly. She held a press conference with the other mothers, reading a simple statement: we are not property. We are not pounds. We are people. Other women followed. The house changed overnight. The locks came off the doors. The scale was tossed into the garage, not smashed, not burned. Just left there, powerless, collecting dust. The library room, the punishment room, was transformed. We painted the walls soft blue. Brought in shelves, beanbags, floor lamps, and books. So many books. Memoirs, novels, manuals on recovery. Stories about girls who broke systems. This room once silenced us, my mother said during the opening. Now it teaches us to speak. Every girl who entered was allowed to leave. That was the only rule. The sewing circle reborn. We renamed it, not because we were ashamed of our roots, but because we had grown beyond them. The Thursday Circle now met in a local library conference room. We taught actual embroidery again, yes, but also budgeting, scholarship applications, nutrition taught by actual professionals, and most importantly, consent. The right to say yes. The right to say no. The right to live. New girls joined. Every week. Not just from our family network. From the wider community. Some never said a word, just stitched in silence. That was okay, their silence was no longer forced. It was healing. David and Brad. David started college. A different campus than mine, but we talked every week. He told me his mother had cried when she saw him smile for the first time in years, not the fake, guarded one, but the real thing. He was studying social work, focused on youth protection. Brad, despite everything, stayed home for a while. He helped investigators sort through digital evidence, handed over every folder, every login. When asked why he didn't delete it all, he said, "Some part of me always knew what we were doing was wrong. I just didn't know how to stop it. Until now." He applied for a social work program too. Rejected med school. He said he didn't want to treat broken bodies anymore, he wanted to prevent them from breaking in the first place. Justice beyond courtrooms. Not every father went to jail. Some got lighter sentences. Some families still stood by them. Rumors flew. Articles were written. A documentary was greenlit, the rehabilitation centers were shut down. Investigations into their licensing exposed a tangled mess of payoffs and illegal transport of minors. New laws were drafted to close the loopholes they'd exploited, but justice wasn't just the judge's sentence. It was the girl who now ate without fear. It was Maya, who came home and hugged her sister. It was my cousin Margie, who danced in gym class instead of fainting from hunger. The letter. 6 months later, I started receiving letters, same handwriting every time. My father. I never opened a single one. Instead, I burned them. Ritualistically. In the fireplace he once used to warm the prison he built, smoke curled up like a silent scream that no longer scared me. My future. I accepted the scholarship from a women's rights organization. Pre-law. Advocacy focus. I wasn't the same girl who hid scales and starved herself to survive. Now, I study policy. I write laws. I join task forces. And sometimes, I just sit in the Thursday circle and listen. Sometimes? That's the bravest thing you can do, sit and listen. The final stitch. One Thursday, a new girl came in, no more than 11. Her sleeves were long, her eyes downcast. Her mother sat beside her, clutching her hand. "We don't know how to start," her mother said. "You already have," I replied. We handed them fabric, a needle, a packet of seeds to take home. Everyone gets one. The girls plant them in their yards, on their windowsills, even in empty soda cans. We call them reclamation plants. They grow where control once lived. Final lines. Justice isn't just sentencing. It's education. It's prevention. It's one girl reaching back to pull another forward. Every Thursday, we gather. We document. We speak. We stitch, not just fabric, a future. One thread, one voice, one survivor at a time.